Now that we have AI and tech, a lot of the playing field is going to be level again. So how do you differentiate yourself? They ideally want all this tech and this AI to help solve efficiency problems. But as human beings, we're going to lose out on those things we are not using. Your story, failures or learning lessons that you've had, how you show up and getting visually present, having videos, doing podcasts, a number of different things where we're not competing against AI because no one has the exact story or has walked in your shoes one step. I think we're just all built as human beings to connect with other human beings.
Welcome to the Selling from the Heart podcast on the From the Heart Business Network. You've joined a global movement of sales professionals who are dedicated to being authentic and building trust. We call it Selling from the Heart. Together, we're on a mission to bring sincerity and substance to the sales profession we all love. Get ready to be inspired and equipped as we join our hosts, Larry Levine and Darrell Amy.
Sales leaders, hiring salespeople by resume and gut feel is expensive. The interview tells you how they talk. Sales Index Hire shows you how they sell.
With Sales Index Hire, you get data-backed sales candidate screening built from the same assessment science used with millions of salespeople. See who is recommended, who's worthy of consideration, and which candidates are not recommended before you invest hours interviewing.
So stop guessing and start building a stronger sales team.
Learn more at salesindex.ai. Hello, and welcome back to the Selling from the Heart podcast. Your co-host, Darrell Amy, here today with Larry Levine. What's going on, Larry?
We're in the deep thick of things. We got all kinds of goodness going on here at Selling from the Heart. Great seeing you. We're in for a good treat today, Mr. Darrell Amy.
Yeah, if you're looking for ways to clearly articulate value to your prospects and clients, you're going to really enjoy this conversation with our friend Cory Dunham. Hey, welcome to Selling from the Heart. If you're new here, you've joined a growing community of sales professionals that are dedicated to being genuine, being authentic, building trust, all the attributes of selling from the heart. And we always love giving a shout out to one of our friends at the beginning of the show.
You know, absolutely. I just want to give a special shout out to a lady named Jenna Harris. She's the head of marketing for one of the most heart-centered companies I know in the Midwest. Jenna, keep waving the flag. You're making a difference. Continue making it happen.
Hear. Well, hey, today's guest is tackling a challenge that every salesperson faces. How do you stand out in a crowded marketplace when prospects struggle to see the difference between you and everyone else? Cory Dunham is an executive advisor, business growth strategist, and speaker. He helps organizations clarify their message, strengthen trust, and create the alignment needed for sustainable growth. For sales professionals, this conversation is about much more than marketing. It's about learning how to communicate your value in a way that resonates with buyers, creates credibility, and shortens the path to trust. Because when your message is unclear, prospects hesitate. But when your value is clear, conversations move forward. And we're going to have a great conversation today with Cory Dunham. Cory, welcome to Selling from the Heart. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Darrell. I appreciate it.
It's our pleasure. Look forward to having you on here, Cory.
So as we get started, you know the question, Cory, that every guest on Selling from the Heart answers, and that is, what does it mean to you to sell from the heart?
Yeah, if I could start with a short story that when I was about 35 years ago, back in 91, I was in the process of getting my private pilot's license, a non-commercial, but still learning to fly. And what most people wouldn't know about me back then, coming out of high school, was that I never liked roller coasters, heights, or anything like that. So I was an unlikely person to become a pilot, seeing as how I too got car sickness quite a bit when I was younger growing up. But at any rate, I was fascinated with it because I started flying remote control airplanes, and I thought, oh, geez, what would this be like to actually fly for real? And when I was in the middle of my training and I had qualified for a long cross-country flight, and mind you, this wasn't very long, it was just landing at 3 different airports within Michigan, where I'm from, that when I was heading to my second airport, not only was I dehydrated, still nervous, didn't eat much, but the weather started getting a little more bumpy than I was used to. So I had qualified for this long cross country. However, because of all those other factors, I had built up some immunity from the bumpiness. But on that second leg, going to my second airport to land on the west side of Michigan, that's when all heck broke loose. And before you know it, I couldn't remember ever tossing my cookies growing up. But in this case, if I tossed my cookies once, I tossed them at least 6 or 7 times along that second leg of my flight to that second airport. And I thought literally I was gonna die. My energy level totally plummeted, and I felt like, man, if I could, I just wanna crawl in the back of this airplane and just take a nap because I was so exhausted. I'm freaked out. But after a few moments, because of my faith, I said a quick prayer along with remembering what my instructor taught me is like, Corey, if everything breaks loose or goes to heck, throw out the checklist and just fly the airplane. So I really, at that moment, I simplified it with the energy I had left and the focus. I adjusted my instruments, made sure I was flying straight to that airport. And then eventually the airport came in sight. And before you know it, I was on landing on final. And before you know it, my wheels touched down in that little 2-seat training aircraft. I was so thankful. One of the weird parts in a learning lesson, I'm going to give a tip here, is that as I was landing on my final, my stomach started gyrating again. And before you know it, my mouth was full of stuff. And after I landed, I saw that people were directing me in to park the airplane. I'm like, ooh, I'm not going to look stupid with all this, my mouth looking like that and stuff in it. So I stopped on the runway, which I could do legally. I opened up the door and I spit out, and not one piece of what was in my mouth landed on the runway. Not one piece. It all landed in the back seat because I left the propeller on and it blew all back in the back seat. That's one tip. If you ever have to throw anything outside the airplane, turn the freaking engine off if you're on the ground or doing that. But because of that lesson, I had never been in a situation like that where I literally felt like I'm in a terrible situation here. Nobody's here to come to save me. So because of that self-leadership lesson, this is why I now use our marketing and messaging and clarity along with training people that, hey, and in any given moment, you have the capacity to make the next best step. You don't have to see the whole way, but you can make the next best step. And that's why I coach leaders, help them with their marketing, their messaging, their language, their communication, their team alignment, and business consistency. So thanks for listening to that story.
Oh, what a story. I'm just like, hey, oh, I'm not flying. I love flying, but I'm not going to be a pilot. I'm not even going to attempt to get my pilot's license, Cory Dunham. But there was something in there, and I just kept picking it up. And it's like this self-awareness. It's situational awareness. It's reconnecting to self. Somehow those 3 things were woven into that story that becomes powerful when you're connecting and relating and bringing clarity to others, Cory.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, hey, I know in sales we all have those moments where we feel like everything is not going well, and there's a temptation to freak out and to collect ourselves. And I love your advice about what's the next best step. So powerful. Well, in the role of sales, Cory, as we we're saying in the introduction, communicating value is so key, and yet so many of us struggle with communicating value. I'm curious, if you were to define from your perspective the word value, what is value? How do you see value?
Yeah, I see it as a number of different things. Number one is a win-win when you're in any type of relationship. A win-win scenario is the focus, and then really listening to what that other person. So asking great questions and listening to what they have to say, and then clarifying along the way. It's no different than flying, where we have one destination that we're focused on. However, there's going to be times when we have to course correct, or we feel like we have clarity or we're on the same page, but we may not be because of this reason or that reason. So it's important to have those great questions. Make sure you're listening. And that was one thing I was really good at in most of my life because I've typically been an introvert. I've been quiet and shy and never felt confident speaking. And I feel a little bit better now. And it's been 30 plus years of kind of that personal development and being in the business environment and being in those situations. But really taking the time to listen and to understand, 2 ears, one mouth, let's use them in that proportion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm a high clarity guy, massive high
Mhm.
clarity guy, like off the radar screen, high on clarity. And I think we see this. So whether you're a sales leader or a sales professional, Corey, this is
Mhm.
zero in on this clarity word for a second because it can tag along with, can you clearly articulate value? Where do you think
Yeah.
people struggle along the way with this whole clarity aspect of things? Just curious.
Yeah, I think it's if they're on their own and they're doing their own thing, they're in their own little bubble. I think it's they're assuming too much if they don't if they really don't have the clarity that they need. I think there's too many assumptions. They haven't asked once again those right questions to a situation. And just to give a quick example, when I thought about doing anything extroverted, I used to ask, "Does that feel comfortable? Is that something I want to do?" Rather than, "Is it impactful? Is it valuable? Is it important? And why am I doing it?" So I was
Mm.
asking totally the wrong questions, and that was my only situation I was looking from, the only perspective. And then I got into telling myself stories. So once again, I'm still in my own head, still not really getting clarification of what's going on, but finding evidence that fit the limiting story that I was telling myself. And I find myself at times still doing that, and I have to check myself and have some awareness that I've learned to develop. But if we're in communication with other people, whether that's our team, our colleague, or if it's our clients or prospects, it is so important. Once again, I think to stop along the way, to slow down, and just confirm, okay, are we still heading in the right direction? Are we still on track? Are we still getting some validation that, yes, this person is telling us what we're hearing and we're hearing, what they're telling us? And another aviation example of that is when we're dealing with airports. I think 90% of airports are non-towered airports. So only 10% or less are have control towers. But when you're communicating with them and you're going in their control zone or airport area, you have to communicate with them constantly. You have to repeat back directly almost everything that's communicated to make sure they have my tail number. I'm doing the right thing that they're asking me to do, and I'm where they expect me to be, and that's also for my safety too. Because I've had a situation where I once had my whole family in the airplane at Ann Arbor Airport, where the University of Michigan is, and in that area, it was a nice summer day like we have today, and there was like multiple aircrafts in the air. There's probably 7 or 8 that the tower was giving instructions. Okay, and he told me, he said, "Hey, Corey, or Cessna 757, Mike, you are number 3 to land." So that means I have 2 other aircraft in front of me. When I looked around with my situation awareness, I realized I wasn't number 3 to land. I was number 4 to land. So had I tried to land and not paid attention and have the responsibility that I control the safety of everyone in my airplane, and I just allowed him to instruct me, there probably would have been an incursion or an accident or something ugly. So in that case, I had to divert and go north of the airport and get out of the traffic pattern with all that busyness to simplify, to get clarified, and then recommunicate back to him and say, "Hey, listen, I just left. I'm 3 miles north. It was incorrect communication that I was given, and there was another airplane there that we could have uh, impacted each other." So that's just a situation that sometimes things aren't as they seem we are. So it's good to be checking along the way, both with ourselves and then also to that other party.
Yeah, I think that's so powerful because I think Most salespeople are optimistic, and we got into sales because we're optimistic. We think we can win and all of that. And I think
Mhm.
one of the dangers of being optimistic and is is that we think things are better than they are. We like to sometimes pretend things are better than they actually are. Certainly flying a plane, that's not a helpful strategy, but in sales as well, making assumptions, pretending that things are better than they are when we really do need to just kind of, you know, pull back, circle around again. I like that. Get back to that simple, safe space and recalibrate. I think that's such a powerful analogy for salespeople. Hey, Corey, one of the things I think a lot of salespeople and company owners and sales managers have said over the years is, I really believe that we have an exceptional company, an exceptional product, an exceptional service. But when we go out into the market, it just feels like we get put in the stack with everybody else. And it's such a struggle to differentiate other than just going, we're the best. And it feels to so many salespeople, I know, because I've been there myself, where it feels like you go, I really think we are the best. I think we've got some differentiators, but when it all comes down to it, it seems like we're just getting put in this stack of same. What would you say to a sales professional that's going, "Yep, that's us."
Yeah, I honestly think there are a lot of organizations out there that do a great job in terms of their quality of their service and product. However,
Mhm.
one of the biggest things, especially now with the use of AI and tech, it's very similar. And just a brief story, my my dad started our family marketing business back in 1980. So it's currently 46 years old. I've been
Wow.
involved for 40 years. So almost a decade before the internet was a thing, which is hard to imagine not having the internet.
Yeah.
But throughout all these different changes and everything, we've had to adapt and adjust and really get clear on how we impact people. So I think one of the biggest things that I've seen is that people need to realize when the internet came, there was kind of an equal playing field. Once a ton of thousands of thousands of websites happen. Now that we have AI and tech, a lot of the playing field is going to be level again. So how do you differentiate yourself? I've been using the big D word, differentiation. And one of the biggest things is, to me, the humanizing effect of people, whether it's having videos, doing podcasts, a number of different things where we're not competing against AI because no one has the exact story or has walked in your shoes one step. A lot of us have similar services that we offer, but when you share, similar to how I'm sharing some stories about me, that really separates you. And also some of the maybe failures or learning lessons that you've had can help. So your story, how you show up, and getting visually present, I think is a huge thing. So you have to find ways to differentiate yourself. Now that, let's say, everyone is using AI, everyone's using tech, automations, and this and that. So you're going to create a deeper connection and trust when you, I believe, have that human to human relationship that most people, they don't necessarily outwardly want that, but I think we're just all built as human beings to connect with other human beings.
Hey, you know what I like about what you just said, and I'm sitting here thinking through this is we live in this tech-driven world. It's not going away. We live in this AI-driven world. It's not going away. But how do you step in front of all this to actually humanize yourself as opposed to dehumanize yourself? And I think a lot of it is how can you leverage video and how can you leverage a lot of these media and tech outlets to actually humanize yourself in various different ways. So I can humanize myself by having a face-to-face conversation with Corey, but I can still humanize myself because Daryl could be watching a video that I put on insert name of social media platform. So it's how do we put this all together and actually humanize ourselves with technology, not hide behind all of this technology?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and one of the factors in there, I also use this example of back in the day. I can still remember my home phone number from 45 years ago because we only had one landline, so it's beat into my head, and I still remember. I'm like, why is that? Whereas now, I have 3 children. I know one of their phone numbers because I use it when I go to the movies to get my discounts and everything. But the other 2 children, I don't know their number, and so I have to look at their name. But my point on that is that without knowing it, all of these, big companies, along with gamification on all these apps, they want to keep us on their apps, and so they're making things easier and easier and easier. And we don't realize it, but if we're not being intentional and exercising our brain, our critical thinking, if we're not exercising our muscles and getting out there, if we're not eating well and being intentional on what's important there, we're going to lose out on those things we are not using because we're just
Mhm.
hitting easy buttons in many different areas of life. That's a great thing, but that convenience and the greater impact we can also have, that needs to be put in a certain space. But we also need to have space for being intentional, making sure us as human beings are staying viable and relevant, and of course healthy.
I love it. We've been in marketing now for almost 4 decades. That's incredible. What do you think? What do you wish more salespeople knew about marketing, or what do you think salespeople should dive into deeper when it comes to lessons or expertise from the world of marketing? Just curious.
Yeah, I think it's and I look back at my dad's example, for 20 plus years, probably before 2000. We were Most of our deals were all handshake deals, and I couldn't wrap my head around it when I was in my teens when I started working here. But I was like, how do we do business? We don't even do any marketing ourselves, any type of marketing. And what I figured out is that my dad had created the original social networking, or social communications, which is through relationships,
Mhm.
trust, and the handshake deals of having integrity, having reasonable price and great value. So having that, as you talked earlier, having a lot of value that you create should be multiple times more than what we're charging. And of course, long term for our clients, but also to having that service mindset. So I think in one way we have to be selfish. What do we want as salespeople? What do we want? And then that's going to drive, that motivation is going to drive us. But that needs to be, if we're looking at the Pareto's principle, that needs to be the 20%. And then we need to
Mhm.
flop it pretty quickly to the 80% of how can we help and serve other people. But if we stay stuck on our own selves, that's going to be too selfish. People are going to see right through that. But if we're serving other people, we're always looking for solutions and how we can help them, which then helps more people and potentially develops that trust to get a referral and great things said about you. And then developing at least one raving fan who's going to market for you without you ever asking.
Oh, there's a oh boy, you got my head spinning on this. But I want to play on what you just said, Corey, and this whole social network, because there's marketing attached to this.
Hmm.
For all the salespeople that are watching this and sales leaders as well, I would double down on this because the best way you could market yourself, especially in this tech-driven world that we all live in, is really humanize yourself through these social networks and stay visible in these social networks. Create handshakes with these social networks. Have raving fans in these social networks. They'll do all the marketing for you, Corey.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah, and that's one thing, as I said, naturally we tend to be getting away from the humanizing things, but we need to be intentional, or get a head check and start adding back in some of the things that make us human with these interactions.
So couldn't agree more on it, for sure. Well, as we wrap this conversation up, when it comes to articulating value, what value can you add to salespeople just to say, hey, when you're thinking about value for your customer, for your prospect, what should be going through a sales professional's mind?
Once again, we should be finding out what's important to them. What are they trying to achieve? What additional experiences do they want? Because sometimes, depending on the questions you ask people, it's hard for them to frame that or answer those questions if they haven't thought about it. But sometimes people just want a better experience, and I know for me, a lot of the leaders or business owners that I work with, they want less stress. They ideally want all this tech and this AI to help solve efficiency problems and different things like that. but we're becoming, as I've shared in a keynote that I talked about in Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago, just that AI does not fix a confused business. So we need to
Mm,
clarify through leadership, and then we need to clarify with our teams, figure out role assignments, and then once again checking mechanisms throughout the whole process and where these balls are being dropped. Because I keep saying, I hate to say it, but as human beings are becoming the weakest link in us doing anything in our society. And so it's so important that we really need to figure out what the goal is of the people we're serving, and then really finding out once again, what do they want to accomplish? What challenges are they seeing on a regular basis? What positives do they want to see more of? And maybe it's taking more time off or just working a 40-hour week instead of a 50, 60, 70-hour a week, depending on what they have going on. And they're constantly on rather than having boundaries, personal, off, joyful time, and then your business activity where you're just going at it, serving people.
You know what I like, Darrell, as we wrap this up? Clarity, 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 and more clarity, both personally and professionally.
that's right. That's right. Well, hey, Cory, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. I know our listeners are thinking what I'm thinking, and that is, how do I get more Cory Dunham in my life?
Yeah. One of the best ways is through LinkedIn. I'm on there. And then along with my website, corydunham.com. And then I also have a podcast called Unapologetic Leadership Podcast.com.
I love it. I love
So
it. Well,
good.
thank you for sharing time with us today. It's been an amazing conversation.
Well, thank you both. I appreciate it.
Our pleasure.
Yeah, what Cory said at the end about, how confusion really hurts a business. And you go to technology with confusion, you go to AI with confusion as a business, you're going to be in trouble. Same thing is true for a sales professional. If you're not clear on what your who your ideal client is, what your value that you bring to them is, and then at each client level, the questions and the listening to get clarity on that, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. But the good news is, when you do your homework, when you do get clarity, and when you do ask the questions to clarify for a particular client, good things start happening.
Absolutely. And I just got to beat the drum on this. I just have to, is this being able to clearly articulate, and I'll insert in meaningful value, because
Mhm.
Cory alluded to it on an equal playing field where tech and AI are at right now. You may think, again, you may think you're better than somebody else, insert whoever your competitors are. But if we look at this through the lens of your clients and your prospects, it's an equal playing field. Those that with conviction and clarity can articulate meaningful value somehow get invited to the table a whole lot faster.
They sure do. Well, hey, thank you for joining us today. Thank you to everybody who is sharing this podcast with your friends, with your peers, with your clients. It is a growing movement of authenticity, now over a decade old, and we're not done yet. We're just getting started. We've got great guests coming up throughout the fall and winter, so make sure to like and subscribe. Larry, it's just so exciting, all the things that are happening around here, and I couldn't be more fired up about what's ahead.
No, it's been a great, great, great 10-year ride in selling from the heart and bringing this to the forefront. This all doesn't happen without you. So I just want to say I'm massively grateful for all of you who actually watch and or listen to the
That's right.
podcast.
Absolutely. Well, hey, thanks for joining us this week. Until next time, keep being genuine, keep being authentic, keep building trust, get clear on your value, and most of all,
Sell from the heart.